has. What are some of the things that are wiser money spent versus maybe foolish money spent?
I guess one thing that we see are people probably spending more money than really is justified for their particular neighborhood or size or value of home. It's I hate to categorize things by price or range, but I guess out of necessity we'd have to look at it that way. Major maintenance items, especially right now the energy efficient items, new windows, low E energy efficient type windows, insulation, siding, but again this is all usually just to compare with what's going on in the neighborhood. And I guess that would be one guideline I'd say. Look around the neighborhood. What are people with homes similar to yours, what type of improvements are they making?
Yeah.
What's happening? What would make your home more comfortable and, you know, to fit in your neighborhood?
Don't over-improve. Some
Yes.
people will over-improve, put more improvements in than what's right around in their neighborhood. They're not probably going to get out every dollar for dollar that they have put in.
I'd almost say that, quite truthfully, you realtors are probably better at recommending those type of items than we are. As appraisers, we're going to report essentially what the market's doing. We won't create the value or set the value. We will report what's there. And oftentimes you realtors have a better feel and handle of, you know, what type of improvements the market's looking for at that particular time.
Right.
And items that would...
Well, I think you hit a really good point of trying to do basically what your neighborhood is doing and being comparable to those around you. And you see it in new construction as well. When we sit down with a builder, you know, you may not see any use of a jetted tub, but if everybody down that street already has one in, you ought to put it in just to keep up with the Joneses per se. And you may want to do something that's a little extra, set yourself off, you know, set yourself separate. But like you said, it may be money you're just kind of giving away. It's maybe your own little over improvement, but you get too much of that, and money's just down the toilet essentially.
If everybody on the block has air conditioning and you don't, you're probably not going to get as high a value on your appraisal as their air conditioning or their fireplace or a double car garage opposed to a triple car garage. So look around your neighborhood, see what your neighborhood has.
And you know,
that's a good guideline.
Right along there, lines of air conditioning is gas heat. You know, some of the neighborhoods that started as all electric heat, and then they ran gas through it, say 15 years ago, and a bunch of people have tapped into it, and you still haven't. You know, that's something I see as much as anything is, you know, we want gas forced air heat. I don't want, you know, electric, you know, baseboard heat or something like that, and keeping up with what people are doing is good. So when you know, in the process of how everything works, you know, say I have a buyer and we find a house and they want to buy it, and RJ starts the loan and he comes and he orders the appraisal, and you go out and inspect the property. Then it's down to finding comparable sales. Where do you find your comparable sales? What process are you going through when you do that?
We'll work fairly closely with our lender, but realizing that the appraisal industry is a very highly regulated business. We have a very thick book of guidelines that we need to follow, as well as following guidelines and requirements from our lender, the intended user. Idaho is what's called a non-disclosure state, where sales information does not have to be disclosed to the public. So we're purchasing our information from the MLS service in Pocatello. That's our primary resource in finding comparables.
And MLS being the multiple listing service
Correct.
that us realtors use, and
that they put
and
together.
when we put a house up on the market, we put it on there, and
Information's there.
all the other realtors have
Right.
access to it, and you guys
So
subscribe to
we'll
the
have
service. And
all the comparables, all the sales and listings that are current. We'll then go through those listings, but like I said, we're required to follow fairly strict guidelines as to location and even the time of the sale, and then how similar to the subject a particular comparable might be. So we'll be looking for comparables, one, that are similar to the subject, size, design, type. We'll also look as close as we can in proximity to the neighborhood, or sometimes we have to go outside an immediate neighborhood because the market area might be similar. and then we'll just try to go through and refine, find which ones we think might be the closest. But again, we haven't gone in and inspected a lot of those comparables, and so we're utilizing the information that the realtors have published. So that's fairly critical.
Usually your guidelines would be within 1 mile. They like to see comparables that are 90 days or shorter. A lot of people don't understand that they can't have an appraisal from a year ago or 2 years ago, and that appraisal will use. The market trends change and the pricing changes. 6 months is usually the max that a lender would use for lending.
Right, right. Now, RJ, from an appraisal standpoint, how many, when you write the loan, you supply to an underwriter, okay? And why don't you explain what an underwriter is and what he's looking for in an appraisal?
Okay. An underwriter is a person representing the lender, whether it's a local credit union, whether it's a national bank. An underwriter is going to review the appraisal and make sure that it meets all of the guidelines that it needs to meet in order to finish the loan.
Okay.
So they're going to double check that against all regulations that whether that lender requires or on a national level.
Now there's been deals that I've done where the appraisal gets turned in, and I'm chatting with the lender about it, and he says, well, the underwriter didn't like the comparable sales, or the underwriter didn't like. How often, is that your underwriter here is in town?
Yes.
Is it often that he goes back wanting more comparable sales, or why would he not be happy with the set he was given originally?
It can be dependent upon where those comparables came from. A good point has been made. We're not like a Boise or a large metropolitan area where a builder will come in and punch out the exact same home in the same neighborhood. And so if I have homes that maybe are in Chubbuck, and there's only 3 real good comparables in that area, well, the appraiser might say, the underwriter, excuse me, might say, can you get me one more comparable, even if it's just barely outside of the distance requirements, but in the same area. Maybe it's not an exact ranch home. Get me another home that maybe is a split level, but it fits in the neighborhood. It is a comparable sale. It's in that area. Just give me one more additional comparable to justify the value.
That's probably the difficulty we have in looking at comparables, is not having hundreds of the same model of home.
Right.
We have oftentimes comparables that aren't exactly like the subject. We have to take what we feel are the best, and then we make adjustments accordingly. Although recently a lot of the regulations were a lot more restrictive on the type of adjustments and how much of an adjustment we can make for any particular item. The location, sometimes we have to make adjustments if a comp might be located on a real busy street, might be the only comparable we have, so we'll make an adjustment there because of that busy street as compared to the subject that might be at the end of a cul-de-sac.
Right.
But it becomes a little bit tricky, and I guess that's where the guidelines come in, and the lender, our intended user, a lot of times will help provide us guidelines as they review of, yeah, you better find another comp or two if you can, even if you have to make adjustments outside of that immediate neighborhood.
Right, right. Yeah, and obtaining a value, it's not an exact science by any stretch,
Well, an appraisal states that this is our opinion of value.
Right.
And that's what we try to establish, is our opinion.
Yeah.
Of course, we have 20 pages worth of stuff then to show how we got our opinion.
When you're saying opinion and value too, we have seen with the national economy and even the local economy, values have decreased in some of the areas. As we discussed earlier, the higher you go in your value, you're going to see a little bit less than what you saw a couple of years ago, because the market has slowed down. There's not as many values or properties available.
And I think it's important just that people understand that when a lender orders an appraisal, that appraisal is to protect the lender and to protect the buyer. and so you want to. They're there to protect the parties involved.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and call it a day for today. We're glad you joined us. Hopefully you learned some things about appraisals. I want to thank Ron, Char, Tovey for joining me, and R Jay Henderson. I'm Bill Satterfield. On behalf of the Greater Pocatello Association of Realtors, we thank you for watching Realtor Talk, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.